The question that we've been asked is, how can you delete an invoice in ULaw? You know how you can reverse an invoice in ULaw, but can you actually delete the invoice in ULaw? Deleting a legal invoice is a little complicated. So first I'm going to create an invoice and show you scenarios where you can delete and how you can delete, and then why you cannot delete in a few circumstances. So let's create a quick new matter, and let me make it like Amit, this is BP. So let's say it's a family matter, right? And we can say first initial client meeting, of 1.2 hours, and then let's say a settlement conference or 2.0. I'm going to hit the save button. I'm also going to add a few disbursements because it's easier when you actually have that. So we can explain the whole thing of deletion. So let me add a few disbursements. So I'm going to say new disbursement. Let's say it was paid from general, fee, application fee of $100. And let's just also add a retainer. So we can say new retainer, and that's $2,000, right? And just let's say pay by check, and put the application. So as you see here, we have a $2,000 retainer. We billed him, about $1,400 of legal fee and $113 disbursement. So let me go ahead and raise this invoice. And once I raise this invoice, ULaw will lock all the dockets and disbursements related to this invoice. So here's your invoice. Clearly tells you that, hey, there was a settlement conference, an initial client meeting, and it puts the retainer, and it gives you the bill that this is the balance of trust. Okay, so you can technically move all this money from trust to general and pay yourself. But for some reason you decided, there are two mistakes. This should have been $150 and this should have been a little bit more time. Maybe the initial client meeting was a little bit more, or maybe you had another docket for a telephone conversation that you missed. You cannot do this in this invoice basically because it's locked. Like for example, if you edit an item, it says, hey, and say like, I want to edit this application fee. It says, no, it belongs to invoice 3408. You can't do that, right? What ULaw has now introduced is a feature by which you can delete this invoice to 3408 in full or in partial. You can do both. You can basically remove components out of this invoice, or you can actually delete the invoice in full. Let's show you how we do that. To do that, first you have to be admin, right? If you go here and click the action button and delete this new thing called delete invoices, you're not in admin mode. So let's get into admin mode, and to get into admin mode, you click on the action button, administrator, enable admin. You will see the yellow mark here that you are in admin mode. Go to matter. Now, if you click on action and then click on delete invoice, you'll now see, hey, you have one invoice here that you can delete. Okay. So I'm going to click on the delete invoice, and it'll going to break it down into multiple pieces. It's going to say, hey, there's a disbursement and there's a legal fee. What do you want to delete from that invoice? Do you want to delete both or that? Now there are two parts to deleting an invoice. One is basically releasing the docket off the invoice, right? Because if you look at this invoice, we consider this to be the docket portion, and that's the disbursement. So releasing that is the first part. So you can say, I want to release the entire legal fee. Then obviously now there's an accounting portion that you need to delete as well. So you can say delete the posting. Similarly, now you can say, I want to release the disbursement, and then delete the posting. Once you do that, now you've released everything. Now you can hit the close button. Now I'm just going to reprint that invoice, because now I've deleted everything from the invoice. The invoice should be actually a null invoice. Let's do that. So when you print that invoice, you actually now see it's empty. There's just a $2,000 retainer and there's nothing in it. Everything is deleted. Now what you can do is you can actually go back to that invoice, right? And actually now start working your way to editing it. See, now you can edit it. You can say, hey, this was actually supposed to be 1.6. Oh, and by the way, I forgot my telephone conversation, right, which was another 0.2, and hit the save button. So now you've now added more to it, right? Like, basically, if you remember here, you only had 2 in this invoice 3408. Now we've added a few more. Now you can go ahead and raise a new invoice. In fact, I'm just going to do a pre-bill just to show you what's now in the pre-bill. So now in the pre-bill, what you will now see is your new telephone conversation got added. Your initial client meeting went up to 1.36, and your final bill, now it tells you like, hey, the retainer balance is good. Now if you're revised and you found everything good here, you can actually go ahead and raise this invoice. You can say, hey, I want to complete this invoice, right? Go ahead and raise it. So now the beauty of deletion over reversal is it allows you to make changes to small mistakes that you have done. Like, for example, you just raised an invoice and you realized, oh my god, I did this. Like, we allow you now to delete it and go ahead and actually re-invoice. But now the invoice number is new, 3409, right? Because that 3408 is completely deleted, and we can take it from there. Let's show you one last thing. In this, you realized, hey, you know what? I'm actually not ready to send him the disbursement. I want to remove this disbursement. So now again, you can go back in admin mode and then click on action, delete invoice, and say, you know what? This new invoice I created, 3409, I don't like the disbursement. You know what? I'll bill him next time. So you can just delete it, off that invoice, and then close it. Now if I go ahead and reprint this invoice, you'll now see that the disbursement has basically made its way off the invoice, and there's only legal fee. There's legal fee, retainer, and that. So EULA now has full flexibility where how you can delete. Now there are conditions when you cannot do this, and I'll show you an example. Like, for example, let's say we do a trust transfer. I hit the question mark, it tells me, hey, you're eligible for trust transfer for the legal fee. If you do that, right, let me quickly choose a trust transfer. What I'm going to do is just transfer the legal fee alone. Not, obviously you can't transfer the disbursement because you removed that out of the invoice. But if I transfer just the legal fee, right, and hit the transfer button, let me make it an EFT, right, and hit the transfer button. Now clearly now, you transferred the money. That means in the matter, right, you should not be able to delete this invoice. So if I go now action and try to delete that same invoice before where I want to remove the legal fee now, it should now tell me, sorry, the trust transfer has already occurred. You're not allowed to delete it. You need to actually undo your trust transfer, then only you can delete it. So the delete feature, unlike regular invoices, because legal invoices are extremely special, right? There are constraints under which the law society will tell you, hey, you cannot do this. These are some of the constraints. We have implemented that where you can now take those situations where you can actually analyze and see, hey, where your invoice is, and based on where you are, you can partially delete the invoice or 100% delete the invoice. So if you have further questions, do reach out to Spark, right, and ask us like, hey, how I can handle this, because this is a complicated process and you're in admin mode. So if you do certain things, you cannot undo it. But we strongly recommend it. There are situations where you need to use delete, right? Like, use delete. Like, obviously nothing beats pre-bill. Like, always we like you to pre-bill, be 100% so that you don't have to go through this hassle. But if at all, if you have to, and it's an immediate thing, you just raised an invoice, you realize that something is wrong and you want to correct it, EULA 100% allows you to do this. So to summarize, under the action button, there's a delete, and you have to be in admin mode to actually exercise the delete. And we also exercise all the rules of legal accounting to make sure that invoice is properly deletable and only we allow you to delete it at that point of time.